Henry Fonda, the WW2 soldier who returned and made Hollywood see the face of war. The echoes of gunfire pierced through the thick fog of dawn, a brutal reminder that the serene morning was but a veil over chaos. In the heart of Europe, Henry Fonda clutched his rifle, breath hitching in his throat, as he watched comrades fall around him. What does it mean to be a hero, he thought, the question gnawing at his insides like the cold biting at his skin. A young idealist from Omaha, Nebraska, he had once believed that valor was a straightforward path, paved with honor and glory. Now, as the distant rumble of artillery grew louder, he grappled with the harsh reality that valor often came at an unthinkable cost. "Henry, stay low," shouted Captain John Jack Thompson, his voice cutting through the din like a lighthouse in a storm. Jack was a weathered veteran whose eyes spoke of countless battles and haunting memories. He had become a mentor to Henry, guiding him through the minefield of war and the emotional turmoil it wrought. But even Jack's stoic facade trembled under the weight of the horrors they faced. Flashback to Omaha, 1939. The sun shone brightly over the modest houses lining the streets, children laughing in yards, and families gathering for Sunday picnics. Henry walked hand in hand with Margaret Maggie Ellis, his best friend since childhood. Her wavy brown hair danced in the gentle breeze as they strolled down the tree-lined sidewalks, discussing dreams of the future. Maggie was an aspiring writer, her notebook always within reach, capturing the essence of their lives with words that flowed like the river beside them. "Do you really think you'll become an actor, Henry?" she asked, her hazel eyes sparkling with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "Absolutely," he replied, a confident grin spreading across his face. "Just wait, Maggie. One day, I'll be on the silver screen, and everyone will know my name." But as the months passed, the winds of war began to shift. The world outside their idyllic Omaha began to darken, and Henry felt the pressure mounting. Friends enlisted, neighbors whispered of duty, and the call of patriotism became a relentless drumbeat. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of orange and purple, Henry found himself steeped in indecision. He stood at the crossroads of his life, torn between the dream of Hollywood and the call to serve his country. The weight of expectation bore down on him, and amidst the laughter of his family, he felt an unsettling urgency. "Maggie, I think I'm going to enlist," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Her expression shifted, concern etching deep lines across her forehead. "Henry, you don't have to do this. You have so much potential. Think about your dreams." "I know," he replied, a mix of defiance and fear in his eyes. "But what if I don't? What if I just sit here while others fight? I can't live with that." That night, Henry made his decision, a resolve hardened by the tide of societal expectation. He enlisted impulsively, leaving Maggie with a churning heart and an inkling of fear about his future. The very next day, he was whisked away, trading the familiar streets of Omaha for the uncertainty of the battlefield. As he lay now in the trenches, the cacophony of war enveloping him, he could hardly recognize the boy who dreamt of acting, the boy who believed in the glory of heroism. The faces of his fallen comrades haunted him, and each explosion felt like a shard of glass piercing his soul. Would Hollywood ever want to see the face of war, he wondered, when all they showed was the glitz and glamour of victory? In those moments, as he ducked from the flying debris, Henry understood that the journey he had embarked upon was not merely about honor. It was about survival, the fragility of life, and the stories waiting to be told. The true cost of war was more than bloodshed. It was the shattering of dreams, the loss of innocence, and the enduring scars that would follow him long after the last shot rang out. The contrast between the battlefield and the quiet streets of Omaha lingered like a bitter taste in his mouth. Each day, as he fought, he thought of Maggie, her laughter echoing in his mind, a reminder of a simpler time when his biggest worry was auditioning for a school play. Now, he dodged bullets, wondering if he would ever return to tell her about his experiences, to share the reality of a soldier's life, the raw and unfiltered truth that Hollywood had yet to capture. The struggle between his past and present hung heavy in the air, and Henry clung to the hope that one day, he would find a way to bridge that gap. As the sun set over the battlefield, he silently vowed to himself that if he survived, he would make sure the world saw the face of war, not just the heroism that was celebrated, but the pain, the loss, and the human spirit that fought to endure. The cacophony of war had become the backdrop of Henry's existence, a relentless chorus of chaos that drowned out the dreams he once harbored. Each explosion felt like a personal affront, tearing apart not just the landscape, but also the very fabric of his naivete. He thought back to Omaha, the laughter shared with Maggie, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her aspirations of becoming a writer. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago, long before the weight of combat settled heavily on his shoulders. As the sun rose, casting a harsh light on the battlefield, Henry found himself in a makeshift trench, the earth around him scarred and pockmarked. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the dampness of the soil, creating a pungent reminder of death that lingered in the air. His heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of warfare, but from the haunting memories of friends he had lost. Faces flashed before his eyes: Tommy, who had been so full of life, now reduced to a memory, and David, whose laughter could lighten the heaviest of hearts. "Keep your head down, Fonda." Captain Jack Thompson's voice boomed, snapping Henry back to the present. Jack, a man who had seen more than his share of horror, was both a mentor and a constant reminder of the fragility of life. With a weary expression, Jack crouched beside him, the lines etched on his face telling stories of pain and survival. "This isn't a game. You've got to stay focused." Henry nodded, but the words felt hollow. The idealism that had once propelled him to enlist now felt like a cruel joke. He wanted to be a hero, but what did that even mean in a world where valor was often met with tragedy? He glanced at Jack, who was lost in his thoughts, the shadows of his past evident in his eyes. It became painfully clear to Henry that war did not create heroes, it merely revealed who was left standing when the dust settled. Meanwhile, back in Omaha, Maggie Ellis was wrestling with her own demons. The vibrant city filled with her dreams felt like a distant memory. The news of Henry's deployment had shattered her world, and every letter she received from him was a lifeline. Each word was imbued with a mixture of hope and despair, and she clung to them like a lifebuoy in a turbulent sea. Maggie had begun to write, pouring her fears and anxieties into a play that captured the raw truth of war. She envisioned a story that would resonate with those who had never witnessed the battlefield, a narrative that would challenge the glorified representations of soldiers portrayed in films. But every publisher she approached seemed to dismiss her work, their dismissive remarks cutting deeper than any wound. "A woman's perspective on war? That's not what audiences want," one editor had scoffed, the condescending tone igniting a fire within her. How could they not see that the reality of war was not just about the soldiers, but also about the families left behind, the emotional toll that lingered long after the last shot was fired? Determined not to be silenced, Maggie continued to write, each word a rebellion. She filled her notebook with scenes of heartbreak, courage, and the bitter taste of loss. In her mind, she often pictured Henry, his warm smile, and the way he would cradle her hands when he spoke of their future. "You'll see," he had said, "one day, I'll be up there on the silver screen, and I'll tell the world what this war really means." In her letters to him, she poured her heart out, urging him to stay safe, but also encouraging him to keep writing. "You have a voice, Henry. Don't let this war silence it," she wrote, hoping he would find solace and creativity amid the chaos. Back on the front lines, Henry received her letters like a balm for his soul. Maggie's words transported him back to Omaha, to the moments of laughter and dreams shared. Yet, as he read about her struggles, he felt a new wave of guilt crash over him. Here he was, entrenched in a battle for survival while she was fighting her own war at home, one that was just as fierce but far more insidious. "Do you think I'll ever get to tell my story?" he penned in one letter, his hand trembling as he wrote. "Every day here, I see things that are beyond comprehension. I want to scream, to shout, to make them understand. But what if I come back, different? What if I can't find the words?" Jack, observing the young soldier's turmoil, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You'll find your voice, Henry. It's in you. Just like it's in the stories Maggie is creating. They will be the bridge between us and the world back home." But the battlefield was relentless. With each passing day, the toll of war weighed heavier on Henry. He witnessed the loss of comrades, the gaping holes left in the fabric of their unit, and each loss chipped away at his hope. During a particularly harrowing battle, he was forced to make a decision that would haunt him for years, a choice that pitted his instinct to save a fellow soldier against the need to follow orders. The screams of the wounded echoed in his mind like a siren, and as he grappled with the consequences, the ideal of heroism he once cherished seemed to slip further from his grasp. Meanwhile, Maggie's determination began to wane as rejection letters piled up. Each one felt like a personal attack, chipping away at her confidence. What if they're right, she whispered to herself, sitting alone in her dimly lit room, her manuscript spread before her like a battlefield of its own. What if no one wants to hear my voice? But then she recalled Henry's laughter, his unwavering belief in her talent, and the way he had always encouraged her to speak her truth. You can't give up, she chastised herself, rededicating her efforts to the script. This is for Henry. He needs to know that he's not alone in this fight. Days turned into weeks, and the letters continued to flow between them, each one a testament to their resilience. Henry urged Maggie to keep writing, to not let the world silence her, while she encouraged him to document his experiences, to capture the truth of what they were both enduring. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Maybe one day, we'll share our stories. Maybe we'll change the way people think about war, about what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves." With renewed determination, Maggie decided to take a bold step. She would not only write about the war but also stage a reading of her play in Omaha, inviting anyone who would listen. It was a risk, but she felt it was necessary. "Henry, I'm going to show them," she wrote in her next letter, her pulse racing with anticipation. "I'm going to make them see what we are going through, the sacrifices we are making. You and I will be the voice for those who can't speak." As the weeks dragged on, uncertainty shadowed both Henry and Maggie. The war continued to rage, and with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. Would they find the strength to face their respective battles? Would Henry be able to return home to share his story, and would Maggie's voice finally be heard? Their connection, fortified through words and shared dreams, became a lifeline against the encroaching darkness. If you're inspired by Henry and Maggie's journey, and want to witness how their stories unfold, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Join us as we delve deeper into the realities of war, creativity, and the indomitable human spirit. Your support helps us bring stories like this to life. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a pallid glow over the war-torn landscape. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. Henry Fonda crouched behind a crumbling wall, heart racing, his mind a chaotic swirl of fear and determination. The mission ahead was fraught with peril, yet it was imperative. Lives were at stake, his comrades depended on him. "Henry, stay low." Captain John Jack Thompson barked again, his voice a tether to sanity in a realm where chaos reigned. Henry nodded, his grip tightening around his rifle as he peered around the jagged edge of his cover. The scene unfolded like a nightmare, smoke billowed from the remnants of buildings, echoing the cries of the wounded and the thunder of artillery in the distance. This was it. The moment he had both dreaded and yearned for. He felt the weight of his decision pressing upon him like a leaden shroud. To advance meant risking everything, but to remain stagnant could lead to the annihilation of his unit. The battle raged around him, a visceral tapestry woven with the threads of valor and despair, and Henry had to choose. "On my mark," Jack whispered, his voice steady, revealing years of hardened resolve. "We move in 5, 4, the countdown echoed in Henry's mind, drowning out the cacophony of war. Time elongated, each second feeling like an eternity. He thought of Maggie, her bright eyes and unwavering belief in his dreams. What would she think if he didn't return? The weight of her hopes rested on his shoulders, a burden both heavy and essential. 3, 2, 1. Go! With a surge of adrenaline, Henry sprang from his cover, instinct guiding his movements. Bullets whizzed past him like angry hornets, and he ducked, narrowly avoiding the spray of dirt kicked up by enemy fire. The objective loomed ahead, a fortified position that held the enemy and their secrets. He could see his comrades moving with him, but the stakes were clear. This wasn't just a mission, it was survival. As they dashed forward, Henry caught a glimpse of a soldier, his friend, Tommy, suddenly collapsing, a gaping wound marring the vibrant life that had just moments ago filled the air with laughter. Time froze. Henry's heart plummeted as he skidded to a halt. "Tommy," he shouted, the word tearing from his throat like a desperate plea. He felt the ground beneath him shake, the reality of the battlefield crashing over him like a tidal wave. "Keep moving!" Jack shouted, urgency lacing his tone. "We can't lose more men." But Henry's feet felt glued to the earth, the weight of his decision bearing down on him. Could he leave Tommy behind? His instincts screamed at him to help, to save. "Go! Now!" Jack's voice cut through the fog of indecision. It was a command, but also a plea. In that moment, the world narrowed to a single point, Tommy's face, pallid and ghost-like, fading in and out of focus. Henry made his choice. He would not forsake his friend. He bolted towards Tommy, dodging bullets and debris, the chaos around him fading into a muted backdrop. As he reached Tommy, he dropped to his knees beside him. "Stay with me, buddy," he urged, his voice trembling. Blood pooled around Tommy, and Henry's heart raced against the tide of despair. "Help is coming. Don't you dare close your eyes." But Tommy's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes glassy with pain. "Henry, you have to—" "No! I'm not leaving you." Tears stung Henry's eyes as he pressed a makeshift bandage against the wound, trying to staunch the flow. The sound of gunfire became a distant echo as Henry's world centered around his friend's fading breaths. It was a moment suspended in time, an eternal struggle between life and death. He could feel the heaviness of despair wrapping around him, threatening to pull him into its abyss. Suddenly, the crack of gunfire rang out. A sharp pain lanced through Henry's side, and he collapsed beside Tommy, gasping as darkness threatened to engulf him. "Maggie," was the last word that escaped his lips before the world faded to black. The sun was setting when Maggie received the letter. It arrived on a day that felt like a haunting echo of the past, one where laughter danced through her home and dreams felt tangible. But now, as she unfolded the paper, her hands trembled with trepidation, the words blurring before her eyes. "Henry has been injured." The sentence crashed over her like a wave, pulling her under. She felt the air leave her lungs, the weight of reality crushing her spirit. Injured, the word reverberated in her mind, a cruel reminder of the fragility of life amidst the backdrop of war. In that moment, everything she had been writing, her hopes, her fears, all of it felt trivial. How could she capture the essence of a battlefield when the man she loved was fighting for his life? Her heart raced with a torrent of emotions, fear, anger, helplessness. She crumpled the letter in her hands, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Maggie paced her small apartment, her thoughts spiraling. She had poured her soul into her writing, believing that art could change the world, but what good was it now? What was the point of her words if they couldn't save the man she loved? She glanced at the typewriter in the corner, its keys silent and mocking. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, frustration boiling within her. The stories she had crafted felt hollow, insignificant against the backdrop of Henry's pain. As the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging Omaha into darkness, Maggie felt the weight of her despair. But deep within, a flicker of determination ignited. Henry had always believed in her, and now, he needed her more than ever. With renewed resolve, she sat before the typewriter. "If I can't save him, I can at least tell his story," she murmured, fingers poised over the keys. As she began to type, the words flowed like a river, each sentence a tribute to the man who had fought for their dreams. In the depths of the battlefield, Henry's consciousness flickered in and out like a dying flame. He could feel the warmth of the sun on his skin, the sounds of laughter echoing in his mind. But they were soon replaced by the stark reality of the war, blood, cries, and the palpable fear of death. "Stay with us, Fonda." A voice broke through the haze, familiar yet distant. It was Jack, kneeling beside him, face etched with worry. "You're gonna be okay. Just hold on." "Tommy," Henry gasped, the name escaping his lips like a prayer. "He's safe. He made it out." Jack assured him, urgency lacing his words. "But you need to focus. Help is on the way." Henry struggled to keep his eyes open, the darkness threatening to pull him under. "Maggie. I need to tell her, hang in there," Jack urged, his voice steady. "You'll get the chance." As Henry's vision blurred, he was haunted by the memories of laughter, love, and the dreams he had once held close. He fought against the darkness, desperate to hold on to those fragments of hope. And then, just as the shadows began to close in, he heard it, the sound of helicopters roaring in the distance, a lifeline reaching out to him. "Help is here!" Jack shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "We're gonna get you out." In that moment, a surge of hope ignited within Henry. Perhaps there was still a chance for survival, for love, and for the stories that needed to be told. Back in Omaha, Maggie's heart raced as she typed, pouring every ounce of emotion into her words. The stories of the soldiers, the truth of war, the sacrifices made, they all needed to be shared. And as she wrote, she felt Henry beside her, his spirit guiding her through the darkness. She knew that even if the world was shrouded in despair, their love could transcend the chaos of war. What she didn't know was that Henry was fighting for more than just his life, he was fighting for the very essence of humanity. And when he returned, he would carry with him not just the scars of battle, but also the weight of their shared dreams, ready to cast a light on the darkness that had enveloped them both. In that moment, everything shifted. The stakes were higher than ever, and the stories woven in the fabric of war would not only shape their futures but also transform the very landscape of Hollywood forever. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield where Henry Fonda had once stood paralyzed by fear and doubt. The chaos of war had faded, replaced by a haunting silence that echoed with the memories of those who had fought and fallen. Standing amidst the remnants of conflict, Henry felt a wave of emotion wash over him, relief, grief, and an unshakable determination. Days turned into weeks, and the war that had once consumed him now felt like a distant storm passing through his life. Back in Omaha, Margaret Maggie Ellis sat at her typewriter, the rhythmic clacking of keys filling the quiet room. She had poured her heart into the play that chronicled Henry's experiences, weaving together her love for him and her reflections on the nature of war. Each word was a cathartic release, a way to make sense of the chaos that had become their lives. The correspondence between them had transformed as well. Henry, now recovering in a makeshift hospital, began to write back with a newfound clarity. His letters were no longer filled with the bravado of a soldier, but rather the insights of a man who had faced the darkness of humanity and emerged with a deeper understanding. "Maggie," he wrote in one of his letters, "I've seen things that shatter the illusion of heroism. True bravery is in the vulnerability we embrace, in the compassion we extend, even in the darkest moments." Maggie's heart swelled with pride and concern as she read his words. She recognized that the man who had left Omaha was forever changed, but he had returned with a perspective that could illuminate the truths of their world. She was determined to ensure that his story, their story, would not be lost in the annals of history. With every draft, Maggie channeled her pain and hope into her writing, seeking to give voice to the silent suffering of soldiers and their loved ones. As the war came to an end, Henry was discharged, returning home to a hero's welcome. However, the jubilance of the townsfolk felt hollow against the backdrop of his memories. He walked through the streets of Omaha, the familiar sights now tinged with an unsettling reminder of the lives lost and the scars borne. It was in these moments of reflection that Henry realized he had not only fought for his country but had also been fighting to reclaim his sense of self amid the chaos. Their reunion was bittersweet. Maggie embraced Henry tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You came back," she whispered, her voice shaky with relief. "But you're not the same." "Neither are you," he replied, pulling back to look into her eyes. "You've turned pain into art, Maggie. You've captured the truth of what we've experienced." As the weeks turned into months, Henry and Maggie worked together to finalize the play. With each rehearsal, Henry found solace in the characters that sprang to life, each embodying a piece of his journey. The story was raw and unfiltered, a representation of the emotional landscape of war that was often glossed over in Hollywood. Their collaboration was not just a creative venture, it was a healing process for both of them. Henry's evolution was profound. He had entered the war seeking glory, but he returned with a vision to change the narrative surrounding soldiers. He began to speak at local schools and community centers, sharing his experiences and advocating for a deeper understanding of the psychological toll war takes on individuals. We need to talk about the cost of conflict, he urged audiences. It's not just the battles fought on foreign soil, it's the battles we fight within ourselves long after the guns have silenced. Maggie's play, The Faces of Valor, premiered to a captivated audience who had gathered to hear the unvarnished truth of war. Henry took the stage alongside her, the applause ringing in their ears like a triumphant anthem. As they stood hand in hand, he realized that the true victory lay not in the accolades but in the conversations sparked by their work. People began to discuss the reality of war with a newfound empathy, acknowledging the emotional scars carried by veterans and their families. The play garnered attention, eventually making its way to Broadway, where critics hailed it as a groundbreaking exploration of the human experience in war. Henry and Maggie were invited to speak on various platforms, sharing their story and advocating for mental health resources for returning soldiers. Their message resonated deeply, igniting a movement that helped countless individuals find their voices. As they stood together on the cusp of this new chapter, Henry understood that his journey was not just about confronting the past but also about shaping the future. He had learned that heroism was not the absence of fear but the courage to confront it, to seek understanding, and to foster compassion. With the final curtain call of The Faces of Valor, Henry and Maggie took a moment to breathe in the applause, the energy of the crowd washing over them like a wave of hope. They turned to each other, eyes glistening with unshed tears, knowing that their shared experience had forged a bond that transcended the horrors of war. And as they exited the stage, hand in hand, Henry turned to the audience and said, "Let us remember that each of us carries a story, a truth that deserves to be told. If you found meaning in our story, share it. Talk to your friends, your family. Let's continue this conversation because it's in understanding each other that we find our strength." In that moment, the audience erupted into applause, but Henry's words lingered in the air, an invitation to reflect and act. As the lights dimmed, the message was clear: the journey of healing and understanding was just beginning. So, if you've been touched by Henry and Maggie's story, if you believe in the power of art to change lives, take a moment to share this message. Comment below with your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that challenge the status quo. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment of our journey together. Remember, every story matters, and together we can spark change. As the credits rolled, Henry and Maggie stood outside the theater, looking out at the stars twinkling above Omaha. They knew that while the war had shaped them, it was their love and commitment to each other, and to the truth, that would guide them forward. In the quiet of that night, they embraced the future, ready to face whatever came next, together. Subscribe.